Hello and welcome to the Film Lovers Guide to the Galaxy. We are here to talk movies and other stuff, mostly movies though. I am Jared. I am here with Joe and Johnny. Today we are going to talk about the Oscars and just kind of the aftermath of it. Little bit of ratings talk, super fun things. When you how Actually, I'm gonna first start off. What have you guys been watching this last week? Have you did you guys been watching anything good? See any good films this past week, Johnny?
Actually, yesterday I showed Dakota Nocturnal Animals.
Ooh,
It came out 5 years ago.
yeah,
Tom Ford film. And if you think Tom Ford, the fashion designer, you are correct. This is the second movie that he's made.
interesting, right?
Yeah. And I remember watching it and I thought it was really good. But, I like to, since it's 2016 is what 5 years, this is the year where I'm going to start rewatching some stuff to see if 5 years has changed my thought. I still absolutely like the movie. My Dakota really she gave me a lot of tips on if we were ever trapped in those situations, I need to not let it happen. Have a bat,
Mm-hmm.
make sure to swing
Yeah.
at kick ass whenever he tries to attack us. But if you guys haven't seen it, it is on Netflix. It stars Amy Adams, Jake Gyllenhaal, Aaron Taylor Johnson, Michael Shannon. It has a really star-studded cast, and the basic premise of the movie is Amy Adams' ex-husband sends her copy of his new book, and as he's reading it, she's kind of reflecting on kind of their relationship, and it kind of mends the two together. So it's a high recommend from me if you guys want to take
Awesome.
something that's a little bit different.
Yeah, that's a good call. How about you, Joe? Have you been watching anything recently?
Yeah. I watched two things sort of to since the last time we talked about stuff. I mean, the first one's Invincible. I know it's not a movie; it's a animated series on Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
I would say because this type of animation is very American animation, like the way it's drawn and stuff. Almost feels kind of a throwback to, I would say, like early 2000s, early 2010, the way that American animated stuff was drawn, like not Asian or anything.
Now, would you say is it a little bit of Airbender or a little bit
Oh,
less Eastern influence than that?
I I would say even a little bit less. It almost feels like if you took like a classic, because this is what it is. It's based off a comic. If you took a classic comic and just animated it just on the way it's drawn,
That's
I
great.
I really liked it. I think the way they did it was really well done. Obviously, the story is very very gripping.
Mm-hmm.
I guess in terms of spoilers, since it's already out, am I allowed to talk about it, or do you think I should?
I would give it another week
Okay,
just because it's fairly new.
that's fair.
I read the comic. I didn't read all of it, but I
It's a
do
long
know.
comic.
But yeah, I mean, it went on
It's
for a
it's a it's
while.
a big boy.
But it's written by Robert Kirkman, who also did The Walking Dead. So his stuff is really good. I stopped with The Walking Dead at issue 100, and I kind of read synopses after that. I just
Yeah,
couldn't. I
it's hard to follow.
issue 100 was when Glenn got brained by
Oh, like
Negan.
the big peak on that one. I see.
Yeah, and I remember sitting in my car because I couldn't wait. I got issue 100, and I got to that page and I went like, and it's I mean the comic is in black and white, but it just he's yelling Maggie like that whole thing, and he's just his brains are everywhere, like he's just pulp, and I'm just like, yeah, I don't think I want to read this anymore. It was just like this weird like, okay, fine, I'm done.
I mean, Stephen Young is in both, right? So I guess that's
Yeah.
sort of how it happened. But not to give away anything, but I think the it's only seven episodes or 8 episodes for the first season. It got renewed for two more, which is good because I think there's a lot of
Oh yeah,
material and
for sure.
story. So they have a lot to work with. So I think they're in terms of how much they got is great. And I think that it has a great hook. I think it has a great storyline. It has a very interesting take on traditional superhero movie
Hmm.
stuff.
And I think that's kind of what we were talking about last week. What hooks us and
Yeah,
everything.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm really excited to get into it because I haven't watched it yet.
Nice,
The
nice.
couple movies I've watched this past week, one was Nomadland, and we'll get into that during Oscars talk, and the other is I showed my girlfriend. She did marching band and regular band in high school. She performed at the Australian Olympics with her high school. Like, she was in band. She had never seen Amistad. Not
Hmm.
Amistad, Amadeus. God, we were
Oh,
talking about
okay,
Amistad as well.
there's two
No,
two
yeah,
different
I'm
movies.
sorry. We're you could edit that out. She had never seen Amadeus. And I'm not like, I was like, really? You've never seen Amadeus? She's like, no. And I was like, all right, we're gonna turn it on. And that movie, one, blows my mind. It was made in '84. Because to me, that is such a modern take on a story like that. And then two, man, it's just so still so good, you know? Like, I don't know, like the way that the music comes in when Salieri or Mozart is reading or writing music, and you can hear it in their head, and then that part at the end when they're writing the requiem, man, it's like chills still. But yeah, that's pretty much all I've been watching. It's been kind of a packed week with homework and other stuff. But what we all did, either watch some of or watch all of, was the Oscar ceremony, the Academy Awards. Now, as you all know, 2020 was kind of weird, right?
It was. Yep.
That big old steaming pile of panini
Just a little
happened.
bit. Just a little bit.
And I think it was appropriate for this Oscars to reflect that. In recent years, the Oscars have been kind of less, necessary viewing for me. It's just been kind of like, what the fuck, in the last few years. I'll watch them. I remember, last week where I was talking about my grandma getting me into movies. I remember every year, my mom and I, we'd be cooking dinner. It would be Sunday. My grandma would call, be like, "Oh my God, can you believe what this person's wearing? This person, what do you think? Who's going to win what?" And it was like a real tradition. But like, as time went on, she got older, and we just kind of, we all got older, and we really couldn't do that much anymore. But I still would watch it. Johnny and Joe, like, do you have any either sentimental connection to the Oscars or any kind of things that real stick out to you about Oscar Sunday?
Personally, not really. I mean, I hate to follow you up because you have such a better story than me.
Oh
But
no, it wasn't meant to be like that. I'm just,
yeah,
like, when, like, some people throw Oscar parties, which,
yeah.
one, I wouldn't be able to
I
handle
mean,
that. That would
I
be
think
a
it's
lot for
cool.
me.
Yeah, I get it. I think I've seen videos of people who throw Oscar parties, and
Hmm.
it's a little fun thing to do, and I get that. But personally, I just sort of in the last couple years, I think mostly what I did was I would have it on in the background.
Yeah.
I would sort of just say, "Oh, this coming out." I'll just kind of pop my head in. So, okay, so that's the first one. Okay, and then
Yeah,
oh,
that
you know,
I really feel that too. Like, I don't know about
so
you, Johnny, but I don't know if that says anything to the movies. When we get into the ratings talk, I think I'm gonna expand on that, at least my opinion. But what about you, Johnny? Like, what did you do you have any like ritual for watching? What do you think?
Growing up, this is kind of one of the things that our family actually kind of watched together. We would have like Oscar poll or like Oscar bet stuff like that. And trust
Oh,
me,
that's fun. Yeah,
we
betting can make everything better. Let me
better.
tell you.
But the problem is that like I've never. I haven't seen half of these movies, right?
Yeah,
Because we're
right.
watching these
Yeah.
9, 10 years ago. So how am I betting? How attractive I think the person is, or how good they look at that time, right? That's kind of how
What are
you
they
formulate what
wearing
you're wearing,
tonight?
right?
They're wearing Armani, so
Right.
they're gonna win.
So growing up, I see the glitz, the glamour part of
Mhm.
it. But as you get older, now that I view it, it's kind of like something about that is missing. Whether it's because we kind of changed. I would say that the internet has not lent itself really well towards the Oscars because once you
Mhm.
can find results within 5 seconds, it makes watching something that is supposed to be prestigious kind of obsolete.
Interesting.
I would compare it to a sports game, right? if you knew the Lakers won a game by like 20,
Okay.
do you want to go home and rewatch that game? Probably not. You'll just watch the highlights, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the idea is that the kind of prestige kind of dies down. Now, luckily, the past several years, one of my best friends, Chloe, she loves movies, so we actually, that's another person that I can actually talk about Oscars because she kind of still enjoys that. So it kind of brings it to me, but the direction that they're trying to do to keep it modern has been very hit or miss the past several years.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with that. I mean, your analogy to a sports game or a sports whatever event, 100%. It's fun when I'm on Twitter. I'm able to bullshit with people. I remember years past, you and I would tweet at each other, just make jokes and that kind of stuff during it. But I just for the past few years, I haven't felt that. One, I think it's because there's no easy way to watch this shit online. You know, it's, well, you got to register, you got to do this, you got to do that. It's like, how, okay, if you're not going to let me just stream it online with ads or whatever, I'm fine with ads, whatever, put commercials on there. How are, I gotta have a TV provider. Okay, well, I guess I could use my dad's or whatever. I still think it's kind of bullshit that you're trying to grow this audience. We'll get into the ratings talk now. People are shitting themselves that, oh, only 10 million people, less than 10 million people watch. Well, no shit. There was no easy way to watch it. Two, who the fuck saw movies in 2020? And three, the people who did see movies, who the fuck saw these movies?
Yeah.
And it's been like that for the past three. I loved Parasite. I loved these movies. But the reason why the Oscars have a problem is because they don't nominate movies that people watch.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And this is kind of where in terms of me loving movies, this is kind of where we hit a crossroads, right? Because the movies that they're nominating are movies that I would try to get people to expand their library.
Totally.
The problem is that the first 3/4 of the year, you're advertising to me blockbusters, and that's what most people go see. So, and unfortunately, between October to December, there's other things that happen holiday wise. You got Halloween kind of kicks it off for some people, right? But then you got Thanksgiving, then you got Christmas, then you got New Year's. This is why they, prestigiously, that's why they send screeners to people to kind of watch, and they get the nominations. But most regular people, they're not going to go to a theater during this time of the season, simply because there's other shit to do. But then they maximize it with blockbusters during the summer. So then now it's like, I can see where that disconnect happens.
I never really made that connection. That's a pretty interesting way to put it. I realized that, most of the year, Johnny's right. They spend millions and millions and millions of dollars telling us to watch these Marvel movies or this and that, and then, but the best picture is Nomadland. And is there some? Yeah, I mean, is there some legitimacy to that movie? Yes, of course. But there's a huge disconnect.
I don't think there's any legitimacy to the Amazon propaganda movie that is.
Jesus.
I'm just.
But no, it's just a very. I never really put two and two together in terms of that disconnect, and
totally, it's a really good point.
It's a fantastic point he made. So Johnny made so.
And Joe, like you said it, you spend how many millions and put these
Tons.
Marvel movies up.
Yep.
For, hey, watch us. Some people see them 3-4 times over, and then it's like, oh, hey, there's this there's a movie about some farmers that are from Korea, and then
right.
I love Minari. I think it was one of my favorite movies of the year. But good God, like,
my general question is, let's say that the best picture was like a blockbuster Marvel movie, right? Let's say that one for whatever reason.
Let's say Endgame.
Yeah,
let's
sure.
Endgame.
Who does it piss off really? Like who? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it would just
Martin
be the
Scorsese,
people, like the 15 people, old dudes that are voting for this shit, right? But then the overall, I think if they did this right, let's say they did it for only 1 year, I think that in terms of people wanting to watch the Oscars would go way up.
I think that gets to what they did. They were going to propose last year, which was the Johnny? What was it? The box office
Yeah, it was like a
award
box
or something
office
like that?
award,
Yeah.
which, to me sounds good in theory, but I
Hmm.
would absolutely hate it because why? If it's good to make that much money, then it should be good to just be a Best Picture nominee, if that's the
Bingo.
case, right? So
Absolutely.
so here's the thing, and this kind of dates a little bit history. So everyone, if you were in 2008, knew that there's a movie that was called The Dark Knight that came out. Okay. So up until that point, and I still contend this personally, it's the best superhero movie ever made. Now, that being said, everyone, Heath Ledger got nominated for an Oscar. Visually, they got some Oscars, but a lot of people were pissed that year that The Dark Knight wasn't nominated. And this was when Best Pictures only had five pictures. So that's why the following year it got expanded to you can get up to 10. It pretty much simply that's the reason why, because they wanted to make sure now, if there were blockbusters that can come in, that would be the case. Really, the only blockbuster that I can see in the past several years that actually did get nominated for Best Picture was Black Panther
Hmm.
and Inception. Those are really the only two blockbusters. Everything else has still been indie movies, but now it just gives the illusion that it can make it.
When they expanded it to 10, it was like here's your guys, here's one for you. And I think it was such like a half measure, to borrow from Breaking Bad. It was such a half measure of like, see, we'll placate you, blah 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 blah. And it's like, fuck, really? Like, you think this is gonna do it for us? Like, get out of here. Like,
They
to have,
tried. That's all I gotta
I
say.
think I think I put it in the group chat. The Oscars right now are run by boomers, are geared towards boomers, it's everything. And it's a boomer show. And I don't want to watch it.
So they can't really complain that people as the the millennials are basically in their 30s right at this point, and especially with was it Gen X or whatever that's following us. I mean, if you and those are the people that consume so much more media and so
Mhm.
much more movies and everything, and so if the bottom line is if the tastes of generations change, there's nothing wrong with that. And the definition of I think best picture is what the what the general population would like.
And then you have these people, oh, we don't need a host, oh, we won't do this, oh, we'll do, it's like, and I am kind of shitting on the Oscars right now. I think the Oscars are important culturally. It's important for us. I think it's important, for the business, for economic reasons, to have people interested in movies. But you know you gotta you have to do something to toss our generation a bone. Like, here we are, we're a very rare group of people because we have a podcast about movies. But shit, do you think my girlfriend watched the Oscars? No. Do you think she want? I even forgot the Oscars were gonna be last weekend. Right? I mean, it was like, oh shit, the Oscars are this weekend. I even tell that to my dad, and he's like, oh, whoa, okay.
Yeah. I was like, because I was in Denver for Nicole's wedding, my friend, and Dakota and I were at dinner, and she had to she reminded me because she told me, "Hey, do you want to know who won some of these awards?" First off, I was like, "Oh shit, it's on!"
Oh,
And Denver is an hour ahead of at least West
hmm,
Coast, right? So I'm
yeah.
just like, "Oh yeah, oh crap, I gotta." So went back to the hotel and started watching kind of the rest of it. So, but yeah, it is something that normally I would remember, but this year is a different type of year, so I get why I
Totally.
kind of forgot it. But I will say, yes, they have to get a different direction that kind of goes in. I will say this year, up until a certain point, it was kind of okay with me. Now, when I realized Steven Soderbergh was one of the producers, I understood what they were trying to do. He wanted to
Hmm.
tell stories within stories. I
Totally.
agree. We do need a host. Just let Regina King do it. I don't
We need a host.
like
I
the one of the best parts of the telecast for this year was Regina King. Like the first 10 minutes was
Totally.
so good, and I was all like, "Why isn't she coming back? Come on, you guys!"
So the Ringer had a really good article probably last week or so on the whole James Franco and
Anne Hathaway.
Anne Hathaway hosted Oscars. I don't know about you. I really liked that Oscars. It was different. It was, but I think where they ran into trouble was who the fuck is still writing for the jokes for them? It's these people who have been writing for the Oscars for how long? Yeah, the vessel has changed, but the machinery in the vessel is still the same. It needs a complete overhaul. Give Soderbergh either full reign or give him something different. But we can get into like the big thing. If you were following along on Twitter, who the fuck? Why would you put Best Picture not last? That's, to me, you're setting yourself up for a couple things. And I think you already know which they are. One, you save Best Actor for last. Johnny, who did you think was going to win?
Chadwick Boseman.
Because he unfortunately passed away. It was going to be this great moment. And then you're fucking kidding me? He doesn't win, which is fine. He doesn't win. I don't begrudge them for that. But the guy who does win doesn't send in an acceptance speech.
Yeah.
It was a fart in church.
Well, I guess from what I read, that Anthony Hopkins wanted to zoom in, but for some reason couldn't. So I don't know if it's his fault. Yeah. So I don't think it's his. I think it's the telecast's fault. So
no, that's who I was blaming on is the telecast. It's if you don't have that and you're just gonna end with, all right, later.
Yeah, and here's the thing, like, right? So the Oscars are on ABC. ABC is owned by Disney. Mm-hmm. Disney has a very and you could tell throughout the night they were telling these human stories and they're propping up Boseman, and rightfully so, right? But the Oscars always is about the reason why you put Best Picture last is because it's a culmination of everyone going together, right? So it is about the director, the actors, the writing, the prop guys, all of it all together. That's why you save it for last. So you guys made a calculated decision to think that because I will say this, if Boseman did win, then yes, I think this would be,
it would have worked, baby.
It would have worked because the whole night you were talking about storytelling and telling stories, and this is the story you're going to tell. But there should have been someone that said, what if? Well, we technically don't know the actual winners because it is still voted secretly. And then, I did read stuff before about how, like, don't forget about those British voters because they love them some British people and Anthony Hopkins, and I was like, okay, that might be it. That would have been intriguing. And so if we were to flip everything over, like, let's think about the storyline for a second. They wanted to build Chadwick Boseman up, and if he would have won, it would have been great, right? But why didn't we do it the other way? Let's say we did it as before, put Best Actor second to last or third to last. Let's say Anthony Hopkins wins. That's fine. Yes, we're a little disappointed that, Boseman didn't win. But then for Best Picture, you got Nomadland winning, right? Chloe Zhao, second woman director to ever win an Oscar, first Asian woman to win an Oscar. Now you're gonna prop that up,
and don't forget you had John Boone. The
from Minari.
Yeah, the Parasite actor giving it, or the director.
The director, yeah. So to me, the only reason you did this is because of Disney, right? Because if we were gonna follow through with the whole storytelling, if let's say Nomadland didn't win and Promising Young Woman did win, right? Now you're giving a platform for women empowerment and how this rape revenge story kind of won. Let's say if that didn't win, Minari won. Now you have another Asian cast that won. Let's say if that didn't win, and then Ma Rainey's Black Bottom won. Like, there's so many options that you can keep within the storytelling framework if you still finish with Best Picture at the end, but Disney really focused on just Boseman itself, and that's where everything was heading in the right direction. But if you can't finish a production or a movie in the last 15 minutes, you kind of sour a lot of what we just watched within the first couple hours.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think the story of that you were telling all night was one of Chadwick's going to win, and it was this moment of catharsis. It was this moment of, hey, we had this year of collective trauma. We had this year of racial tensions, the pandemic, everything that we had. And, with all the stuff going on with the Asian community, Asian Pacific Islander community, and we had that. We had, triumphant moments with that. But then they just blew it, How do you end it on that? You could have had a broadcast that was so, I'm going to use catharsis again, cathartic for everybody in the industry. People lost their jobs, people lost their lives, people, and the in memoriam was like a flip book. It was so quick and disrespectful, and they leave out people. Get the fuck out of here. If they marketed this Oscars as, hey, this is a night for all of us. It doesn't matter if you watch these movies or not. We're going to celebrate these movies, but we're going to celebrate us together as a country, together as people going through this awful, awful thing. And we're going to do it through the magic of movies. And they fucked it up. I don't know. Like, I just, can you imagine that? Like, if they did end on Boseman winning, or they did end on this collective, like, hey, we're going to be here for you. Movies are always there. And,
The one thing I don't get is I get that I understand that it's supposed to be a big secret on how it votes and all that stuff, and they do a whole thing about making sure nothing leaks, and I understand the spirit of that, but I think at the end of the day, the Oscars is like a big production show, like for people to just enjoy. Like that's the core of it, and also to pat each other on the back, I guess. What I'm wondering is why isn't it a bad idea to let the whoever's running the production company know maybe who won, so they can sort of tailor this experience.
Gambling.
So that I
Yeah.
mean,
No,
I
really. A lot of it has to do with gambling. A lot of
no,
it also has to do with secrecy. I think it's because producers, they don't want to. Well, I wouldn't say producers. I would say the Academy wants to make sure they keep this as a very purified thing in terms of the voting, even though it really isn't, right? Because half of these voters just have never seen half of these movies. So therefore, they're just going to vote for whatever their friend is doing, things like that. In either case, they still want to keep the ballots secret as if they were
yeah.
like
And
voting.
I get it.
yeah, I
But
guess.
But I think that you should be like, hey, Steven Soderbergh, yeah, this is what it is. If you tell Soderbergh, I don't think he's gonna fucking tell anybody.
That's
If
what I mean.
you let
Just tell the guy
certain,
that's making it. That's it.
yeah, I
It could be, but it also might be telegraphing how you would position people, things like that, right?
totally.
So there's times where you've seen Oscar winners like sit in the back row because they didn't actually think they were going to win,
Mhm.
and then they have to make this whole trot down.
Roberto Benini climbing over people,
which lends itself to a certain
wonderful
spontaneity
moments.
that happens like that, right? So I'm okay with not letting people know.
But
I just have the
but on
bigger
the other
issue with the
hand,
brain.
Johnny, would you rather have them build up these stories and not pay them off?
So here's the
You
thing.
know?
They just took a risk, a calculated risk, and they misfired it. It's like if you guys play poker, because I know Joe does, it's like you holding pocket aces and you see the board and you think trips won, and then somebody just pulled a full house out of their ass because you really didn't think they would have that hand. Because you for sure leading up to this, prediction wise, you would think it was going to happen, but people didn't expect the British white people to
Psych.
vote for
Psych.
Anthony Hopkins. So this is, he had a lot of pull. So something that we thought was going to be going one way went the other way. that's why this year's Oscars did not work for me, because the framework was correct. They were telling stories. Yes, some of them should have been better, like the In Memoriam, but the idea actually worked for me. It's just that if once the minute I saw Best Picture and it was still like about an hour left, I'm all like, okay, you guys better be doing this correctly at this point if you're gonna flip it like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think with this experiment, we're not going to see Best Picture we'll see Best Picture at the end of each awards from here on out. I don't think they're going to gamble on something like this again. I don't know. I agree that I would rather have the spontaneity. I don't know if
Okay.
we're gonna keep it this way in terms of how the voting is, because they send it to a law firm like Ernest and Young, right? They do all that stuff.
It's
Yeah,
like this famous. I don't know if it's a law firm or an accounting firm.
firm. But yeah,
The
they send
whole
it to
thing
the
is
whole thing
just.
is still there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just too much. I mean, if the whole point of it, the security is if the purpose of the secrecy is to prevent gambling of all things, and it's interesting that they put in all this effort into to making it mega secure. Um, I would have just put some sort of online tally, just say put your vote in. And honestly, core of it is you're right. The people who vote on these things, whether it be anything on these things, a lot of the time they don't watch it, or they watch like a segmented thing that they were sent. And it really it can apply to any awards show. It could be the Oscars, the Tonys, or whatever. That they just don't watch a lot of it, and so does that mean their vote is not as valid as someone who has? So that's always something to think about is all. So, but I don't know. Overall, show is all right, and this is coming from a guy who doesn't really like it that much to begin with. So I had very lukewarm feelings about it.
Mhm.
The whole thing, you know, the whole pandemic thing also made it interesting. But the big pull from that is again, it's an award show. It's supposed to be a show, and because of the pandemic and because all these things that they do, and the fact that like we said before, they were leading up to a thing, I felt a little disjointed, is all, and not as well put together, and that really doesn't help for people who would watch the whole thing. Is all I'm saying.
So we were talking before we started recording about some of the categories. Joe, you were talking about the animation category. What I'll start it off right now. I Who else here forgot that Onward was even a fucking movie that came out last year?
Man, I was so okay. Well, if you're talking about all of them, I've Disney's two of them out of the five, and I mentioned before, and I guess because maybe this best animated feature film is not maybe a big segment of it all. Um, I
Mhm.
really wish that there was more good films to put in these things. And the point I'm making is like, out of the five that they have there, there's always going to be one or two that are very, very good, and the other two or three that are just like that. If there was an option, most people wouldn't watch it,
Mhm.
and so it makes it super, super lopsided. I think that the best animated feature that wins every year are typically the ones that are the big ones that have all this funding, and also again they're very good. I think Soul was really good. So I'm not necessarily complaining about the winner. I just feel like that the category is not as well, fleshed out or just filled with good things. Regards to Onward, yeah, man. Like I remember that it was heavily advertised at the beginning of the pandemic, and it is a Pixar film. You're like, oh, it's a Pixar film. It was all right.
I
You know,
watched it. And it was like
it was all right.
it was 20 minutes in. I looked at my phone and I'm like, well, that's not a good
Oh
sign.
no, yeah, you can't
You
be look.
know,
Yeah, that's a bad sign already. And it was
bad
just,
sign.
yeah, it's
Did
just,
not pass the phone test.
yeah, it was. I don't know what it is. Like I guess because everything's computer animated, right? Soul was computer animated, Onward was computer animated, so it wasn't necessarily like the the production of it all. The story was very bland. Like I don't know if it was necessarily the original. It didn't have a lot of gripping things, and so a lot of the things that kind of would have the average person think that it's a good movie wasn't really there. A lot of it was just mediocre at best, and I'm very disappointed. I'm a little worried because Pixar. Ever since Disney acquired Pixar, I always worried that it dilutes the brand, or Disney would do some shit where because Pixar's used to be a gold mine. Everything that made, for the most part, had really gripping storylines, or it was just a good, it's just good watch. So whenever Pixar comes out with a movie, you're thinking, oh, awesome, I'll check it out. And worst case scenario, it's like a 7 out of 10 for me, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But with Onward, it was a huge no bueno.
It was
It's
a
very
swing and a
disappointed.
miss.
Swing and a miss. I could agree with that. So, but
What about
that's
you,
just my whole
Johnny?
take.
Oh, Onward.
No, not even Onward. Just
I
kind of the
just
categories.
so
Is there any specific category you wanna talk about?
I mean, if we talk animated, I think the problem is that there's not enough representation from the rest of the world for us to watch animated film. I think when we think of animation, we think of Pixar, we think of Disney, and then everything else becomes foreign. So a lot of people don't want to give a shot to things like Wolfwalkers, which is actually a really good movie, or anything that's like it's animation, but this is anime, so we kind of don't want to kind of do that. What I what I would say about the categories in general is that they reduced it enough this year what it was presented on screen, but really I don't mind it being a 2-hour event if we just
Yeah.
do top 5 plus like some of the other I would say 10 categories matter. You have your top 5, which is, picture, directing, all the actors, and writing. You throw in the score, you throw in the cinematography. You can throw in, actually I wouldn't even do costume design, because you can truncate a lot of those, still
I
have
think
the
so too,
event
yeah.
and kind of do that. I get it, these guys want to have their moment on there, but I think this is where using those other categories and combining it with the internet, like YouTube on their own website, and giving them their full breadth of doing however long a speech they want to do. Now it's lived on in the internet and they can watch it, things like that. When in the telecast portion, it really should be the ones that are the main focus. I get what they're trying to say that. So
See, I think costumes. I think all of that, like costume design, everything is fine where it is. I think it's the way it's presented. I think that when it is presented in a way where it's like, oh, these are these categories, like even the award shows, like, oh, on to best tech, set design and all that stuff. It's like, okay, bathroom break, like I think you can't. I don't think you can do that and still have the appreciation for the movie. You know what I mean? I think it's a hard, because it's like, what does best animation? Where does that go? Does short documentary go? It's a weird thing.
let's call Vince and have him book it.
Yeah,
I
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying. I've woken up at 1 a.m. to watch like a 5-hour wrestling show from Japan and not gotten tired of it because I was engaged the whole time. There's a way to make the Oscars engaging the whole time, and it's by nominating movies that people have seen. That's just what it is. So let's go down to some of the key winners that we haven't. I was really, really, really happy to see the grandmother from Minari win. God, she was the heart and soul of that movie. I loved it.
Her acceptance was a highlight.
Oh, so good. I just watched it again before we got on here, and you know those are the things that should be on social media. It should be boom, 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 put it out, they need a social media market. I don't know. We'll stop harping on that. But I was really bummed out, to go back to actor in the lead role, to Riz Ahmed. I really think he deserved that one for Sound of Metal.
The nomination or a win?
The win.
Oh,
I
okay.
think it was between him and Steven Yeun for me.
Oh yeah, good pick.
But
Steven Yeun's up there for me too.
But Riz Ahmed just absolutely killed that role. It was so heartbreaking, and it was just fantastic. I don't know.
I'm always curious to know, for when they're, especially, let's say specifically for best actor, because it's one of the the bigger categories, when they're figuring out who to nominate and then out of those who to pick. is there like at least a standardized rubric they use? Because I watched The Father, and in terms of Anthony Hopkins and his acting chops, it was good. And especially when we're comparing, we're essentially comparing art, right? Because we're
Mhm.
comparing people who are putting themselves out there. Again, Gary Oldman and Mank, he did exactly what Herman Mankiewicz would do. So in terms of that, like where does he rank? Chadwick Boseman in Black Bottom, again, very very good. So I personally just a little bit confused on how they can, unless it's like, oh, I feel like he's gonna win, just gut feeling, and you can give it to the guy, you know.
This is kind of where having a subjective medium become objective comes into play. So
Yeah.
it just really just depends on kind of how you feel. Because I am a little bit different. I actually think Riz Ahmed and Anthony Hopkins were the top two best performers out of the
Yeah.
five. So that's why I wasn't shocked that Hopkins won, because I was
Mhm.
like, oh, okay. Now I am, like I said, I believe Ahmed should have won, but Hopkins winning wasn't all
It
that
wasn't that much of
bad.
a shock. Yeah.
It wasn't that much of a shock. How the telecast played it out was a shock, but like I said, we talked about
That's a
that.
different
So
story altogether. Yeah.
to me, Daniel Kaluuya winning for Best Supporting Actor was great, but he was nominated for the wrong role. Like he legit should have been in the Best Actor
Mhm.
conversation, because if you guys watch Judas and the Black Messiah, he was not a supporting
No,
actor.
absolutely not.
That guy, yes, I know he split time with Lakeith Stanfield, but it was his movie. It really was,
God,
Well,
that
So
movie was so good. The Lucas brothers did such a good job with that movie.
yeah.
here's a question. Let's say you were Daniel, right? Would you rather be nominated as Best Actor, not win, or rather be nominated as a Best Supporting Actor and win as a career choice?
I think that's what kind of the Academy was going for in my mind. I think that was kind of that might have been the aim, is to get him in. I don't know. That's a really good question, Joe.
I think just him personal. Again, I love the dude. I think he's a great actor. Just from a career trajectory standpoint, I think actually physically winning an award, whether it be Best Supporting or Best Actor, is much better than just being nominated. It's always interesting to me, and I don't like to shit on people like this, but whenever you see these films like, this actor, which is not like an Emmy nominee or whatever, I'm like, yeah, the guy didn't win though. That's all I hear in my head, which is kind of fucked up because these guys work really hard to get where they are.
Hmm.
Um,
I
I
mean, before Martin Scorsese won an Oscar, you'd have been Oscar nominated.
you
Martin
know,
Scorsese,
yeah,
you can't do that.
and so and I get that these are good. It's honestly, it's like whenever, and this sports thing, whenever the Clippers have the banners up saying like
Oh
they've
God,
won their thing, but they've never won the championship. It's like, cool, man. It's nice to have
I
something
don't.
there, but
I think that's a little different because one is like wins and losses. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
but
yeah, okay.
like this is kind of more art. You know what I mean?
I mean, either
Like we
way,
could all be
but
like, "What the fuck, Shakespeare in Love?" You know?
yeah, I just it's quite interesting and all. But the whole point Johnny made about subjective and objective, I could see that the mixing there is kind of difficult. But I'm not going to stand here and say that the Oscars are perfect in any way. But let's just hope that they're trying their best. I'll leave it at that.
All right, guys. I think we're gonna get into our top 5 from this award season for the Oscars. So we are gonna go through our top 5 together. Yeah, actually, sorry, not together, but each of us are gonna list our top 5, kind of like we do our other shows. The caveat was they had to be nominated for this year's Oscars. I will start with my number 5. Looking at all these movies, it was really hard for me to go, but I went really hard in the documentary feature category. Number 5 for me is Crip Camp.
To catch an edit and find yourself. There I was. I was in Woodstock.
It is a documentary about a camp in upstate New York, I believe, about where kids with disabilities, physical disabilities, mental disabilities would go, and they would have a summer camp, and there were counselors there, a bunch of hippies that really made the camp equitable for the kids. they made it a place where they wanted to be and they felt like they belonged, because this was set in a time where they didn't have the Americans with Disabilities Act. They didn't have Section 504. They didn't have the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. These kids were shunned away in rooms, not to be looked at. They went into one of the asylums that they had where they would send these kids, and it was horrifying. And Crip Camp goes through the activism that went on with the Americans with Disabilities Act, Section 504 of the ADA, allowing accommodations for any federally funded thing, anything that was federally funded needed to be accessible by people with disabilities. And I am currently in a credential program to teach students with disabilities. I'm going to be a moderate high school teacher. I've been working with the population for 10 years, and this movie was fucking awesome. I had no idea about the history of it, and I loved it. It's on Netflix. I highly recommend it. Joe, you are next, sir. What is your number 5?
My number 5 is Soul, actually.
From the moment I wake up in the morning to the moment I fall asleep at night, I was born to play.
I liked I like the entire feel of the movie, and it's an animated film, blah blah blah. Yeah, but I think that it was well written out. I think the story overall had kind of two tones to it. One is obviously catering to the kid, it's an animated show, and there's sort of like an overall, like a more adult appeal to it, where you kind of look at your life, looking at like what you want in life and how you can try to get true happiness in life, sort of thing. And I think a lot of people can relate. I think just trying to like get through this crazy time in our lives, where with the COVID and all that, it has an interesting feel to it. It has a fun feel to it. It has a sad appeal, a sad aspect of it. There's parts of it where it's like very peaceful, and it had a nice, wrapped up ending to it, even though, and it sort of like gave you perspective. And I think that it had it was just really well done. So in terms of top 5, Soul, huge fan. I highly recommend, like, all 5 you can recommend.
That was a very mature movie.
Yeah, for what it is, for a Pixar
movie,
film.
Yeah.
More so than for the par for the course.
What did you think about it, Johnny?
Oh, I absolutely love this movie. I'll have more to talk about it. I think
awesome, great. Can't
Ken
wait
Powers and Peter Docter, like the evolution that he went, because his last movie was Inside Out, so it kind of makes sense what kind of movies the director makes.
All right, Johnny, your number 5, sir.
My number 5 won this year's Academy Award for Best Visual Effects. It's Tenet.
Well, happened here.
Hasn't happened yet.
I absolutely enjoyed this movie, and it makes sense why I won for Best Visual Effects, because the stuff that happens between inverse time and things like that, Nolan has done really well. I truly enjoy the spy genre. I think he did everything. It was really well done. I absolutely love John David Washington and Robert Pattinson in the movie as well. To me, what made the movie was actually not only the visuals, but the sound mixing as well. I get it. There's going to be a time where people are going to complain about that whole boat scene that happens within Tenet. I'll give you that, because that's the one scene it didn't make sense to me what he was trying to do. Everything else, though, did. And so that is number 5 on my list.
Very good. That movie's real dumb in my mind, but I can see it. It's a technical.
It's so fun.
Technically, it's
so fun.
Crazy.
It's meant to be just super fun. I don't think it's meant to be logical.
I don't know. Talk to Mr. Nolan about that one.
I mean, it is what it is.
My number 4 movie is another documentary.
You're really on this documentary binge, huh?
Yeah, I tend to watch a lot of documentaries when I'm kind of in the mood for just kind of whatever. My favorite documentarian is Werner Herzog. He is the best. He's a great villain in The Mandalorian, and he's great. But this one was real sad. It was really really good though. It's called My Octopus Teacher.
A lot of people say an octopus is like an alien. But the strange thing is, as you get closer to them, you realize that we're very similar.
Yeah, and it's about a free diver who free dives off of in this bay near Cape Town, South Africa, and he forms this bond with this young octopus. It's completely true. It is, and the octopus kind of starts to trust him, and man, it impacts his life. He starts reflecting on this mentor. He kind of becomes this mentor to this octopus, and this real intimate relationship develops between two different species. And it was for around about a year. And oh man, it's heartbreaking in the way that animal documentaries, nature documentaries are in the end, but I highly recommend it. It's really good. And my dad actually recommended it to me, and he's like, you should watch it. And it was like this, damn dad, I didn't know you were this deep. Like he really enjoyed it too. So I highly recommend My Octopus Teacher.
If you're talking about documentary, did you watch The Long Shot or Long Shot about that? I don't know if you heard or not, but it's kind of off topic. But it's about that dude who got convicted of murder. It's like a Mexican dude, and he went to jail.
Oh hell yeah! Where Curb Your Enthusiasm, Larry David saved his life.
Dude, how lucky is that? They have to be fun. Come on.
Larry David saving lives all over town.
What a king!
All right, Joe, what's your number 4, buddy?
My number 4, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom with Chadwick Boseman.
I'm gonna get me a band and make me some records. I knows how to play real music, not this jug band shit.
The reason I liked it is I think that I like the sort of historical feel to it. Again, I'm a big music guy too, so in terms of it's kind of film about music, which is a big deal for me. But I it's interesting to watch a movie with where the actor passed away. I still sort of feel that when I'm watching Batman, even way later. But
I absolutely, I still feel it when I watch 10 Things I Hate About You with Heath Ledger. It really gets you. You're like, no, because you really you're like, fuck, this guy had something.
You're right. So you're sort of thinking. So in my back of my mind, all I'm thinking is, I feel like Chadwick didn't obviously his time was cut short. I feel like he could have produced so much more things, shown his range, shown not just that he's primarily Black Panther sort of deal, even though that's sort of what maybe caused his career to jump up like that. But I like films about old school blues. I like the idea of looking at the history of all that. I think it was very well done. I think that everyone that was in the film, Viola Davis especially, was incredible. And I just have like a little soft spot for movies about music in general. And so Chadwick Boseman, rest in peace. I thought that I'm gonna miss everything you could have done. So that's my piece on him.
Good call. Johnny, your number 4.
Number 4, this movie was nominated for Best Original Score. It is another Chadwick Boseman piece, but it's not that. It is The Five Bloods, directed by Spike Lee.
We bury it. Later on, we come back and collect.
Interesting. Okay.
I would tell you this is a great war film. It's basically this old group's trying to find their kind of like fallen squad leader, and they kind of go through current time and back time as they're reliving what happens during the Vietnam War. Spike Lee, he was really good in it, but Delroy Lindo, this man was robbed of a nomination. He was so good in this movie as someone that, had he had PTSD, right? But you can kind of see it kind of encapsulate within this whole film. If you guys haven't seen it, I won't ruin all of it. I would say it's on Netflix. This is one of the films where, if you're big into war movies or just kind of studying how black culture, black men within the army, these stories never get told. And so to have this kind of be a part of it, I can't highly suggest it enough. You guys should go see it.
Awesome. Yeah, I like that movie a lot. I was definitely a fan. My number 3 movie is Judas and the Black Messiah.
America's on fire right now. And until that fire is extinguished, don't nothing else mean a goddamn thing.
I don't know where to start with this movie. All I'm going to say is you need to watch it. It was one of the most powerful movies I saw this year. It was very impactful to me. Gosh, Daniel Kaluuya, man, that guy can't, I mean,
so good.
Fuck, like it's so rote to say he's good, but fuck, he's good. Like, and like, give it up to the Lucas brothers. They were fantastic in putting this movie together and writing it and all of that stuff. Like, I was really, really stoked to see them succeed on this, and I can't wait to see what else they do. I want to, it's one of those movies where I really want to watch it again, but it's like, fuck, like it's so just so good. Go watch it, everybody. Joe, your number 3.
My number 3, I feel like you guys would disagree a little bit, but I have Tenet on number 3. And I think the big thing there is, I'm a big science guy, sci-fi guy, and I think I admittedly might overhype some science-y movies. Conceptually, when I heard the concept of reversing entropy, I'm thinking, bro, what? And I think when I first heard about the movie and I watched the trailers, it was I think what they're going for is kind of like a vague, they don't want to give away too much sort of thing with these trailers, and the fact that they're trying to do the whole forward and backwards thing. But I think Christopher Nolan does try to do some interesting things. I think that I don't know. It was easy to watch, and it passed. It definitely passed like the phone test, like we're talking about before. I don't think I didn't really get bored at all. I think that John David Washington and Robert Pattinson did it. It was very fun to watch. I think it did the job of what people were expecting, which is a big litmus test for me. And I highly recommend it. I think that it came out in an awkward time. Right in the middle of this pandemic, so that sucked. And I think that if it wasn't the case, it would have done a lot better. And it got delayed a bunch of times, and just again because the pandemic. But I think that people really like how well like the visual effects were done, how like sort of like the cinematography and the action. I think it's all kind of put together in a pretty good way. So that's the reason it's my number 3. Highly recommend.
All right, Johnny, give us your number 3.
Nominated for 5 awards and won Best Original Screenplay, it is Promising Young Woman.
It's every guy's worst nightmare getting accused like that.
Really? Can you guess what every woman's worst nightmare is?
This movie, my wife was talking about this movie, and then Joe was telling me about this movie. And it's one of the few movies that are on this list where there was a wave of emotion as each scene happens, where I'm like,
it's brutal.
I feel angry. I was laughing. I feel joy. I feel sadness. And it's just a great movie for this time period, right? Panda, let me finish talking first, all right?
And did your wife like it?
Oh, yeah. She enjoyed
good.
this movie.
All
so, the ending is one where I won't spoil it, but the last 10 minutes made me feel a lot of different emotions, which I thought was pretty great as a screenwriter to do. That's why, winning Best Original Play makes sense to me. So if you guys haven't watched it, it's available to rent digitally, right? So this is a movie I highly recommend. It's great.
It was amazing.
Completely
huge
agree.
fan. What you got for yours?
My number 2 is I really went between these two, but my number 2 is Minari.
점점 더 심해진다.
얘들아,
네.
더 좋은 거 보여줄까?
I think that really slowed down slice of life kind of movie is something we don't really see often, and I was really happy to see it done well. I connected like really personally to this movie. I think I mentioned it last week of, you know, the grandma moving in, and I just remember the way I felt with my Japanese grandma when she would come here from Japan. This isn't the grandma that got me into movies. This is my my dad's grandmother, or my dad's mom. And it really got to me seeing this family struggle to stay together, struggle to fulfill kind of this dream that the dad had of being a farmer, you know, providing for his family, and just wanting to do all this, like, you know, move to BFE, bumfuck nowhere, and make a living for himself by being a farmer of Korean vegetables and that kind of stuff. And then it just, the heartbreaking things that happen along the way. And it really, man, it was my number 1 until I saw my number 1. So what about you, Johnny? Or not Johnny, Joe, sorry.
My number 2 is Promising Young Woman. I've talked about this before. Again, the fact that it's an original, sort of a very original take on a lot of things, awesome. The fact that the acting chops, awesome. The twists, awesome. So if we're looking, you know, sort of going down the list of what makes a good movie, I think it checked a lot of the boxes. It made, again, like, I can just kind of parrot what Johnny said, made me feel like, oh, this is great. Oh my God, this is shitty. Oh my God, what the fuck, sort of thing. And that's a good thing. I think that's a very, very good thing. And when I first heard the movie, I actually didn't watch any trailers about it. Just nowadays, I feel like there's too many trailers out there who sort of give away the whole thing, or at least me mentally, I can sort of guess what's going to happen, even though I try not to. But with this, again, I try to avoid it. I forget who was the one that initially suggested it to me. It's probably one of my friends, or it could have been you two. I don't know. But when I was watching it, I was very, very pleasantly surprised. And as the movie was progressing, I got more and more engrossed about it. And after finishing it, I'm like, I've been recommending it to everyone. And so anyone that's listening that has not watched Promising Young Woman, it's not an overly long movie. I think it sort of gets to the point. It doesn't have all this excess fat. It really gets to it. It is a trigger movie for those, you know, it's about rape and all that, so just kind of warning there. But aside from that, I think it was excellently done. I think that there's great twists and all this sort of thing that you not necessarily would expect, and highly recommend. I give it an A. So excellent.
Good call. That's a great choice. Johnny, what about you?
My number 2 is a movie that won 2 Academy Awards, including Best Animated Feature. It is Pixar's Soul. This movie is so damn good. First off, you know, it deserves original score because Ross and Reznor did an absolutely fantastic job, especially where scenes where you kind of go through he's experiencing purgatory, and it's just these different sounds that I wouldn't expect in a Pixar movie to have. Yes, it's a little bit more adult, but I think this movie kind of talks about what happens if you go through life and not actually stop and smell the roses. This is kind of what happens to it. And I love at how the realization of not only Jamie Foxx's character and Tina Fey's character, they kind of realize both, like, one wants to live, the other one just wants to get to his career, but what are they missing at a certain point? I can't this movie is so good. There's only one other movie that I thought was better than this, and it's barely better for different reasons. But Soul's on Disney Plus. Go out and watch it if you have it. This is, you know, if you think Onward was a poor showing by Pixar, trust me on this. This movie will wash it all away. You will forget about Onward because this movie is so good.
I agree with those. You know, Atticus and Ross are they? How many is that? 3 for them now? 3 or
Sort of
4 awards?
3 for 3 for what?
Yeah, I
they three?
mean, they got this. They got Social Network.
Social Network.
I know they won one more.
I don't know if they won, but I know that they won Up and Inside Out
I don't
for
think they did those, did they?
for Peter Doctor.
Oh, Peter Doctor is different. That's the director. We're talking
sorry.
the
Dana Murray?
the scores, the
Oh,
people that do the soundtrack. So
got it. Oh, the
Trent
soundtrack
Reznor.
was the soundtrack was. I forgot to mention that because Soul was my number 5. Soundtrack was excellent, and again, this is another animated film about music, and so I loved it. It was fantastic, fantastic.
Oh wow, they did. They've done a lot of stuff together.
Yeah, I guess they've only won 2, but they
did Mank. I didn't realize they did Mank.
They were competing against each other, against themselves in that category.
Wow.
And Soul, like that, I think they rightfully won for the right movie, because at least in Mank, I love the way that they committed to 1930s, 40s instruments. How can we just use only those instruments to create the sound of the movie? And they did that superbly. But with Soul, a lot of that has to be able to convey not only kind of like the afterlife, and then you have the jazz part of it, and they just masterfully done it. So they won for the right movie, but they deserve both of those nominations for this year.
Fucking crazy that the 9 Inch Nails is
I don't think people give enough credit to 9 Inch Nails, man. Like they hear 9 Inch Nails, they think it's some sort of crazy death rock shit. But come on, man. Listen to their stuff before you say something. Oh, it's just sort of the weird thing I've been getting recently. I don't know why, but
Joe is worked up about people's perceptions of 9 Inch Nails, and I'm here for it. My number 1 movie in the vein kind of 9 Inch Nails. Minari was my number 1 until I saw this a couple weeks ago, and it's Sound of Metal.
I can't hear you. Do you understand me? I can't. I'm deaf. I'm deaf.
I have not seen a movie that captures that subject matter ever. Like the way the way he responded to losing his hearing, the way that Riz Ahmed kind of went through these steps, and the way that they portrayed the deaf community he was living in, and the relationships he formed there. He works with the kids. It just, I adored this movie. It really spoke to me, and kind of a way that, I work with students who have hard of hearing, and it really, like, oh man. And then at the end, where it's just, that beautiful kind of silence, I loved everything about it. I loved Riz Ahmed and just his portrayal of this struggling addict who loses his hearing. It fucking killed it for me.
Sort of slightly off topic. There was a film. I'm trying to figure out, because there's just sort of ideas that it's about a guy who slowly loses his vision. It's like a French movie. Is it Vision or something? Or something like that. And all you're hearing are his thoughts. And because they start sewing him up, and like you see through his eyes, and he slowly goes, or something like that. It was crazy. So it's interesting to see some of these films where it's a tragedy, and you could sort of try to really relate. But I like Sound of Metal, but I it just sort of barely missed my top 5. Maybe because it's just my personal tastes.
For sure. All right, Joe, what's your number 1 movie?
My number 1 movie, it's pronounced Minari. Okay,
I'm sorry.
So
I didn't want to, like, is it like, yeah, I mean, I speak Japanese, but I didn't want to put the Japanese,
now that I think about it, it actually pronounced exactly the same as it in Japanese.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I didn't want to say it in Japanese and you be like,
no. I think that's 100% accurate. I didn't really put 2 and 2 together. So what can I say about this movie? So it's interesting because Steven Yeun I'm gonna say everything good about it, and I have just a single complaint. Steven Yeun, again, he's also an immigrant as well. He was born in Korea. He immigrated here with his parents in late 80s or something like that. And then he went to school here and did all the stuff and all that kind of things. The interesting thing about this is that he grew up in a Korean, almost it has to be purely Korean household, and he grew up in the U.S. and sort of has perfect English. And I find that to be kind of interesting because people tell me that because English is my second language, and people don't know that mainly because I don't have any accent, and I think I only spoke Korean until I was in, I don't know, 8th grade or something.
Joe,
Maybe
I
7th
had
grade.
no idea. I had no idea.
Yeah. Yeah. And so growing up in middle school and all elementary school, there was this one Korean dude that it was in my class, and I'd only talk to him. And I think that the brain is a weird thing because I do not remember actively learning English like that. You know how some people just go to school and all that to learn English and really struggle through it. Because there's a guy in my class now who came to America about 4 or 5 years ago. English is good, but you can clearly tell he has an accent. Back to the movie. I think that my mom liked it too, and it has basically what we would call Konglish. Little bit of Korean, little bit of English, sort of thing. And it, I would say, if anything, there's a lot of accuracies about it. It's very melodramatic, and I think it's accurate to what I think a lot of Koreans deal with when they do come to America. The director Lee Isaac Chung also probably had a personal experience with this. I'm sure that Steven
Oh
Yeun
yeah,
had a personal experience with
it was
this, right?
semi-autobiographical, I believe.
Right. Okay. There you go. So it's it's tough. It's depending on some people have it a lot worse. You could get shit on for being Asian, and especially in rural parts of America. It just doesn't mix well. But I grew up in a place in California where had a large Asian community, so that sort of helped. But I loved it. It was one of those things where it's very cool to see how much I can relate. So again, super biased there. But I also seem
No,
to
I don't think that's bias. I think that is just something that really speaks to you and
Yeah.
really, you know.
Yeah. So, and then and sort of kind of veering off topic a little bit, but I sort of like this whole Koreans winning awards sort of streak we're going on with. And it's happening more and more. So, hey, props to it, right? Not necessarily Asians in general. I think winning is kind of cool, but
Korean cinema has really come a long way in the last.
yeah, big deal. And so the thing is, a lot of Korean films, especially like the Train to Busan sort of thing, doesn't really make it here unless it gets really, really popular. I don't know if it has to do with the fact that Korean pop culture, like Psy, made it into the global stage, so that people are recognizing all sorts of Korean things.
Well, I mean, you have this. I heard this story on NPR the other day about this Korean woman wrote a book. I think she's a musical artist. I think her name is.
Go ahead and say it exactly what it is.
Japanese Breakfast is her name. It's a musical group.
Yeah.
So, she wrote a book about her. So her mom is, or was Korean, and her dad is white. And her mom recently died, and it's about her feeling like she's losing that identity. She would cry. I think the book's called Crying in H Mart or something like that.
Interesting.
Yeah, the story really got to me because she was like, I can't call my mom anymore. Oh, what's the seaweed we used to get? What's this? What's that? And not having that connection anymore, and does it somehow make her less Korean and that kind of stuff? It's really interesting.
I think not necessarily with Koreans, but I think a lot of second or third generation Asian kids, whether or not be you're half Asian or whatever, there's a lot of sentiment saying, man, I'm really wishing that I know my roots a lot better. For me personally, when I have kids, I think personally I'll have difficulty integrating Korean in their lives. Unless I marry a girl that's Korean and that speaks just Korean or something. But
Yeah.
whatever the case may be, it's you're losing some of that. Now, you're making your own sort of community there, but it's something that a lot of people think about. Now, in this movie, and this is the last tidbit I'm going to say, the reason that I sort of found it to be kind of my only complaint is the kids' English is too good. And that part of it. Now, I don't know
Yeah.
if that's how it was, if it's semi-autobiographical and his English was amazing. The kid's like 5 or something, right? Or 5 or 8 or
Something
something
like that. Yeah.
At that age, because when I watch Steven Yeun talk in the movie, because he has like the broken English, Korean thing. If it's a family that speaks primarily Korean, you would bet your ass that kid speaks only Korean. So unless he lived with some other family for the first 4 years of his life, which is clearly not the case, it's not going to. Now, I get from a technical standpoint, it's difficult to pick up a Korean kid from Korea and have him play this role. And I think that in terms of casting wise, it was perfectly fine. It was just personally, it sort of had a minor disconnect. I'm thinking, man, this kid's English is just 10 out of 10 with no accent or anything. So I understand what they were trying to do there, but again, the big thing is the grandma was always a cornerstone for all this the movie.
I think she was the heart of that movie.
But again,
Really
she's a really established actress. Keep that in
Yeah.
mind, right? She's people don't know, but in Korean film, she's like in a billion things. Steven Yeun also very established as well. So I get that the kid's not necessarily the corner the exact big part of the movie, but that was the only thing that kind of threw me off. But for those who have not watched Minari and are kind of put off or kind of not is apprehensive because it's in English and Korean and all that kind of stuff.
You know what? It wasn't even I wouldn't even call it a foreign language film.
That's true. That's true. Like Parasite was definitely fully Korean. So it's again, if people are listening, it's not like Parasite where the whole thing is in Korean and translated. But yeah, again, it's like it's an American. I would say it's an American movie for the most part, and I think that you will be pleasantly surprised, very pleasantly surprised. Highly suggest, and Minari is my number one.
Joe, that was awesome. Absolutely awesome. Johnny, what is your number one film?
So my number one is nominated for 3 Oscars. Should have been 4 for Regina King as a director, but it's One Night in Miami.
Yes, Cassius Marcellus Clay is the new heavyweight champion of the world, boy.
Yes, he is.
Oh, okay.
This movie is based on Kemp Powers' play. Kemp Powers actually also co-wrote Soul, so a little connection between my 2 and 1. But basically takes place on one fateful night in Miami where Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, Jim Brown, and Sam Cooke got together. And the ensuing things that happened actually was very, I guess, timely for where we're at now. Now, I will say in the back end, one, I did not know that these 4 actually met together in one night partying. I know the connection between Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali, but I didn't, and I knew Muhammad Ali was good friends with Sam Cooke, and Jim Brown kind of just was there, right? Because there are 4 leaders. But the interesting about this movie and where you can tell this movie was a play, but they livened it up so much that you kind of forget, because I love movies that as long as the dialogue is crackling and you're making me think and you're making me feel, a la Steve Jobs, it works to me. It works for me. One of the biggest things within this movie is there's a big conversation between Malcolm X and Sam Cooke. And they kind of talk about, you have kind of like popularity. You're people listen to you. Why don't you use it for more? Something a la like Michael Jordan, right? Where the man in his prime was making money, but he was never, ever overtly political about anything, because we're coming by shoes. And Sam Cooke kind of throws around like protest songs don't work, right? It just doesn't. And then, Malcolm X throws back at him about Bob Dylan's Blowing in the Wind, right? How that is such an epic like protest song. And this guy is singing about a struggle that Black people have been going through, and this guy's white, right? And why can't we come up or use this power, things like that, and kind of that dynamic. And then you kind of learn the interplay between Muhammad Ali, between all them, Jim Brown, between all them. It isn't as an emotional connection in terms of what you guys have with something like Minari or how you felt about Sound of Metal. But to me, in kind of like this climate politically, this to me kind of talks about the hope and kind of questions or enters a debate about if you had actual power or, influence, like how would you actually use that influence? Do you coast it to continue making money? Do you use it to give a platform or voice to people that don't have one? And it's these dynamics, especially with these four people that are larger than life figures that we have, right? To me, it's just, I remember watching it and I was just like, astounded at how great the movie is, because I was lingering to every word, especially Leslie Odom Jr., who plays Sam Cooke, because Sam Cooke is one of the people that I musically listen to.
Yeah.
But, he got murdered at a very young age.
Do you know much
and we didn't
about his murder?
I just know he did. I don't know. I think if it's like...
Highly recommend you look into it because it's eye-opening.
If you guys haven't watched it, it's actually on Amazon Prime. This is a movie that, if you're afraid of it being just kind of like stagey, play, talky, trust me when I say this, you guys will hang on to every word these guys are talking about, and it's very engaging.
Yeah, really well said. I unfortunately haven't seen it yet, but I really need to watch it. I've heard a lot of good things. One of the MMA / pro wrestling podcasts I listened to covered it, and they really loved it. So, but yeah, that was our Oscar episode. Joe, let's give out some plugs.
Yes, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram, Film Lovers GTTG. Like always, we would love to hear your thoughts. We would love to hear your complaints. We would love to hear your concerns about whether or not we were right or wrong. Again, different opinions are a great thing. So we try to follow it as best we can. Just let us know what you think, and we'd love to hear from you.
Johnny?
You guys can follow me, Twitter, Instagram at JNO11. That's JNGO11. Usually talk about movies or politics, stuff like that. I do want to say, once this episode release, another podcast I'm a part of, the Mortal Kombat podcast, which is a pop culture where we kind of do tournaments. It will be actually our 1 year since we started.
Cool.
So
Congratulations.
if you guys want, come take a listen. You can follow them at Mortal Kombat Pod, wherever you get your podcasts.
My Twitter handle is at JLuthy, JLUTHY. Follow me on there, tweet at me. I tweet about everything under the sun, pro wrestling and other dumb bullshit, because everything is pro wrestling. But with that, Galaxy Brains, have a very good night, and we will catch you later. Peace.